Hi everyone, today's guest is an animal rights activist who has brought a unique approach to street activism with his Beagles and Labrador meat campaign, capturing attention on the streets and generating millions of views on social media. Welcome to the show, Jack. Hope you are doing well. And if you could just briefly introduce yourself to the world who are still not aware of you.
Well, thank you for having me on. Yep, I'm an animal rights activist. I've been doing it for maybe 6 years now. But I started doing social media content within that time period, and I've been filming my outreaches. I really started out filming my partner Tash Peterson do her protests, which garnered a lot of attention. And then I slowly made my way in front of the camera, and I found that I really enjoyed speaking to people, specifically outreach and doing debates and interviews and the sort. But then in recent years, well, pretty much just the last few months, I decided to play some characters such as a farmer, a fake animal farmer, as well as a beagle meat seller. And yeah, and I found that came very naturally, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I was getting great reactions from people. And I was able to do advocacy at the same time using reverse psychology. So I'm really leaning into that at this point in time. I'm wanting to do different characters, and I'm having a lot of fun at the same time.
Nice. And how was this transition from someone being behind the camera, which in my opinion is damn important as well, and people do not get enough credit for? But you were doing that for a
Mm.
long time for a well known activist, and now you have transitioned to be in front of the camera. So how's that transition? How has that been for you?
Yes. So just trying to think back. Yeah, because my partner Tash, she invited me. This was before we were in a relationship. She actually asked me to come film some protests of hers, and I was I found it quite nerve wracking, to be honest, because I'm not one for confrontation, and despite that, I've faced a lot of confrontation since then. And being a camera person, probably because I'm a male as well, and Tash is a female, a lot of that negative attention was coming at me. So yeah, it was quite intense, but I learnt a lot being behind the camera, just watching Tash and watching people react, and obviously being able to find those reactions, know how to film, and know where to position yourself in these
Mm,
quite intense situations as well. But I just noticed the impact we're having on social media was amazing. Like, I think one of
mm,
the first videos I filmed for Tash got 15 million views on TikTok. This was like 5 years ago or so.
wow.
So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I did keep doing that for years, maybe 2 years or 3 years. And maybe during that time, I would sometimes get in the front and do some outreach, because I was an outreach activist before that, but just not consistently.
Mm.
And then since then, Tash and I just take turns, really, in recent years. Uh, one weekend, I'll go out and film her, or she might film me, or on the same day, we'll just swap roles. So we're very lucky to have each other, because it's not easy to find a reliable camera person. So we've been very,
Yeah.
very fortunate to have each other.
That sounds so sweet. And you said earlier that because you are male and you were the camera person, you got some negative reaction. Like what kind of negative reaction and from whom?
Yeah, lots. To think back, I mean, there's been many. There's been many, but I've been picked up by security guards and taken out of stores just for filming. I've been punched in the face recently, had to go to hospital to get checked for that. It was a very hard hit. I've been put in a headlock and tackled to the ground, and put in arm locks, and just by people that don't like us. Many, many things. Most of it all caught on camera. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's intense. It's intense. There's so much negativity out there, and that's just the role of an activist. Whether you're the camera person or the person in front of the camera, you're
Hmm.
both got to receive the backlash to your disruptive behavior as an activist. That's what we're meant to be doing. We're meant to be disrupting social norms, and that's going to lead to negativity at times. A lot of positivity if people are willing to take on that message and change, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, there is a lot of bad stuff as well.
And I'm sorry to hear that. And of course, as activists, we see a lot of negativity and backlash on social media. That's one thing, but to see it offline and not just see it, but experiencing it offline, where people are actually becoming physically abusive to you, is
Mm.
a very different experience. And I'm sorry that you had to go through it. Also, such experiences are an outcome of the type of activism that we do. And I've seen you do some disruptive activism as well, where you were right outside a restaurant, and the restaurant owner acted violently, and that got covered by the news media as well, if I'm not wrong. So how do you see this type of disruptive activism strategically? Like, what are like the values that you see that, okay, these are the positive outcomes that we can derive from this form of disruptive activism?
Yeah. So disruptive activism, not that it's my primary form of activism, it's something I take part in mostly
Hmm.
as the camera person. I will sometimes be a part of it, but I'm typically the camera person because it is quite difficult to film, and I've developed a skill to be able to do that.
Hmm.
But the point of it is to, by definition, as an activist, disrupt social norms, and it is the pinnacle of disruption because you're doing a protest, you're
Hmm.
creating quite a disturbance, but you're doing it with facts and reason to uh, showcase and present to people that don't want to know the truth of what is happening to
Hmm.
animals every moment.
Hmm.
And it is extremely, extremely horrible. So people deserve to know. And
Hmm.
there are many ways to present that message to people. For
Hmm.
me, disruptive activism isn't the method that I choose just by preference. I've tried it, and it doesn't come to me naturally, and that's why I've found
Hmm.
different avenues. But for someone like Tash Peterson, she does it so well. In fact, it comes to her naturally, and she even
Hmm.
enjoys doing it. It's satisfying for her, and she does it so well. And it has
Hmm.
created a lot of impact. Yes, you got to see a lot of negativity, but that's just a result of bringing
Hmm.
to light facts that people do not want to know, that people
Hmm.
would prefer to be ignorant of.
Hmm.
Um, but that's exactly her purpose and other disruptive activists, is to bring that truth to light,
Hmm.
specifically to people that were probably not going to come across the message anytime soon, not even take it seriously. So it's a
Hmm.
real, like, a metaphorical punch in the face
Hmm.
to people that just choose to be ignorant to the atrocities that they are responsible for.
Hmm. And also, very important message there that you talked about your one natural inclination towards the type of activism. Also, probably you have
Mm,
identified what your skill set is and how that can be deployed, and you were mindful enough to acknowledge that, okay, this is something that doesn't come to me naturally, and probably I do not relate with that, or probably I do not have the skill set, or nor do I want to develop those skill sets. And hence you have
mm,
found something which is damn unique to you. uh, your showmanship, the way you present yourself while doing the Beagle's outreach. So I mean, that's also smart thinking to identify how you can contribute to the movement, right? So, on
mm.
that note, tell us a bit about the Beagles Meet outreach, and why do you think that works?
Right. Yeah, well, as you were just saying, I naturally just leaned into, first of all, just speaking to people, doing outreach, debating people, for example, something that just came naturally to me. And I've always done a bit of just acting at home, pranking people. I always like joking around. I like playing, not that I play certain roles around the house. I have done that growing up. I just do it for fun. I just do it for fun. So really, it did come naturally to me, and I just had the idea one day that I'm going to um, do this style of video, and I just started writing down things that were coming to me. Um, I also enjoy watching prank YouTubers online. They not nothing like just when they do social experiments and stuff like that. I don't know whether you would consider it a prank or a social experiment, somewhere in the middle there. And
Mm,
I just love it. So of course that just kind of fed ideas to me. And then yeah, I developed the fake farmer character first, and I got the costume, and I head out onto the streets. And the first idea I had was to display like a fake advertisement, an honest advertisement of what happens inside of farms and slaughterhouses, because farmers and people that work in the industry don't want to tell the truth often. They actually want to create euphemisms and lie about the reality of the exploitation that they are responsible for, because consumers naturally do not uh, want to abuse and exploit animals, regardless of whether they do. They just, I feel like it's a human nature to want to protect animals, despite most humans not doing that. So yeah, I wanted to be the honest farmer, and people would became naturally, when I went out and did it, I was getting a mixture of reactions.
mm,
And often people are surprised to see a farmer that's actually really showing them what actually happens. And I was trying to capture those reactions and do reverse psychology. Ultimately, I wanted people to argue the vegan message as a
mm,
non-vegan to me, and then I put the spin on them, and then really make it clear that actually you sound like
yeah.
a vegan here. You sound like you would rather protect animals after seeing what we do to them as a
Mm.
farmer. Blah blah blah, and it was great. It was great because I'm so used to having defensive people, because they know that I'm a vegan and they might even know who I am, and immediately they put their defenses up. And as an outreacher, it's still good to break down those walls people bring up, but this just cut right through it, because they do not suspect that you're a vegan. In fact, they think you're on their side, and then when you say things that they actually are against, like chopping the heads off dogs, for example, or actually showing the reality of what happens in these factory farms or any type of farm, yeah, they're kind of like, oh, wait a second.
The way you do it, I think what really works for you is that these people start the discussion as someone who's pro vegan, and that's where the reverse psychology works.
Yes, yes, that's right, exactly.
Yeah. And you, like you said that you got yourself that outfit, and you got yourself banners which look very much legitimate, right? So there's a lot of
Mm,
effort, conscious effort, that you put into the packaging of your activism as well. We can call it showmanship or creativity, but that you spend a lot of time and effort into that. And of course, that seems like a strategic decision. Would you like to talk about it, like, and why some
mm.
other activists also should think like this?
Yes, yes, I really wanted to make sure it felt right and it was going to be convincing enough before heading out there and doing it. And yeah, it starts with the costume, because where humans are very observant and can pick out, I was going to say BS, because we just have a natural eye for it. If someone is dressing up as a farmer, but it doesn't seem right, they're going to know they're not a farmer. And so I was really trying to pay attention to the little things like that. So I made sure I got the right shirt. I tried to find a hat. It's hard to do because most of them are actually animal skin, but I did find
Yeah.
a synthetic one. Got the beard growing, got the sideburns, little things like this, mostly actually to disguise myself, because I didn't want to get found out. And plus, I don't look like your typical farmer. Got the boots, or everything vegan. And it was enough to sell it to most people. I don't, yeah. And I saw a lot of comments, people saying, yeah, that looks spot on. It looks well done. And so that was an important initial step, because
Mm,
that's what's going to allure people in. Alongside that, I had the poster created, and that was to, again, convince people, to bring people in. It said something like "Say no to veganism," and that was the first one anyway, and that was great. It was unbelievable how many reactions that got, people coming up to me say, yeah, cheering me on in a way. And that was, it seems counterintuitive, but it was to it's what brought them in on my side, and then I
Hmm.
spin the table and I actually show that I'm quite psychopathic as this farmer that's very honest and transparent about what they
Yeah.
do. And then, yeah, it led to a great discussion and reverse psychology experiment.
Yeah. And talking about reaction, of course, because the starting point is that, yeah, people want to hate on vegans and veganism, so they reach out to you and they cheer you up, and then you have those conversations as well. So in all of this, what's like the craziest reaction that you have ever faced doing this form of outreach?
Crazy because it can go bad or good.
Let's take one each.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the best reaction, there were many good ones, but the one that really stands out and was what I was aiming for the entire time was one that I posted maybe 2 days ago of this man that came up to me and he really argued the vegan position well. He was disturbed. He called me out. He said I was disgusting. He said what I was showing him was evil. And this was all just inside of farms and slaughterhouses. And
Hmm.
he just let me know how disgusting it was.
Hmm.
And he gave it to me and he didn't hold back. And I loved it. So I
Hmm.
just kept pushing back and I held the character as long as I could. And then I revealed myself. But that was such a good one because then at the end, when I said, I'm a vegan and it sounds like you should be too. He said, yeah, it sounds like it. And he was just, because he argued so hard against what I
Hmm.
was showing him, but he wasn't vegan himself. So then
Hmm.
he just felt cornered at that point and was like, yeah, I've convinced myself. Whether or not he's vegan now, I just found that to be so powerful and that was great. Bad, crazy. Nothing really comes to my mind. Uh, but uh, I can just give another good one. Actually, I did have somebody come up because he did recognize who I was, and then he threw something at me and stuff like that. But that's because he knew who I was. But I didn't really get any like genuine angry. Tash the other day got a good one when she was doing the Beagle. Someone actually like spit it out and ripped up the pamphlet and stuff like that. So that was good. We want to get those reactions because we want to show uh, how hypocritical it is that we get so angry and
Hmm.
disturbed at the thought of eating animals that we like versus
Hmm.
the animals that they actually consume and exploit daily. But I will say that there was another good one where, because what I found as the farmer, and this was something that I didn't expect, was
Hmm.
that I was very convincing to people and very persuasive, despite what I showed them, and it was clearly disturbing. Um, because of the character I was playing, a position of authority as farmers. I think people really look up and value animal farmers as being very, very important roles. And I don't really understand that completely, but they are definitely in a position of authority. So I
Yeah,
was
like
playing into
people.
that.
Yeah, people give them that respect in most countries, that they are like the building blocks of our economy and everything, like providing food to
Mm.
people. So that inherent respect is there. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course there is a respect for farmers who uh, farm plants that aren't
Hmm.
exploiting animals. Of course, that is a very, very important role. So I understand that, but it's just that people extend that to animal farmers, which as vegans we obviously disagree with. But what I found was that I was super convincing. I was super convincing to people, and they just said yes and agreed with me and acknowledged what I said, despite how disturbing I made it. So I had to keep stepping up. I had to keep pushing it until they didn't agree with me. And one comes to mind where it was this young man and he agreed to do the interview. He was a very kind of positive person, but he kind of went along with a lot of what I was saying. And I said, I showed him I showed him the initial footage, didn't have sound, and he kind of I could tell he was disturbed, but he kind of just
Yeah.
keeps smiling and agreeing with me because I kept kind of pushing him to kind of agree with it and say that it's good. And do you still support farmers after watching this? Because I was really hoping for that one person to say no, I don't, to a farmer's face, which I did
Is
get, which I described before. But he kept going along.
is this
Yeah,
the
go on.
Is this the same person who said that vegans should be put in there? Is that the one?
Yes, that's what I was going to get to. So
Okay.
I
No, no.
then
So
said, because
just just
yeah, go on.
just hold on, because yeah, this is also one of my favorite videos of yours. So what I've done is I've actually got it here. So we'll look at it together, because I kind of got
Sure,
it that
let's
you're
do it.
talking about that one.
I say they're hypocrites. Like, you know what
Spot
I mean?
on, sir. Because they're the ones that are against animal abuse.
Yeah.
They're not paying for animal abuse. But we are, so fuck them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Mate,
Love what you're doing here,
Love
guys.
that, mate. So can you sign the petition for
Yeah,
us?
absolutely.
You're a
Would love
gentleman.
to.
I love that. Oh, so this is the guest chamber. So I said I did turn down the volume, but you seem to be quite
Yeah.
pro us. You do support us quite a
Yeah.
lot. So I don't normally show everyone this, but I will
Sure.
turn the volume up just for you. So they go down in the gondola. This is the most efficient way to do it. They do scream, but it's only for a temporary period of time, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes. So they don't like it. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But consumer satisfaction comes first, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I really do appreciate you taking the time for this interview.
Yeah, no problem.
Mate, it's because we need people supporting farmers who are abusing, not abusing. Between you and I, we're not abusing, okay?
Yeah.
You agree, right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Now, so I'm going to get you to sign the petition. So this petition not only is there to support farmers anywhere you want, sir, but it's actually to help end the vegan agenda. Now, we have a little goal. I will leave you with this note. We actually want to see vegans in those same gas chambers. You agree?
Hell yeah, yeah.
Hell yeah, mate. Yeah, because that's high animal welfare standards, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, of course, it'll be suitable for vegans.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, another little step for you. We actually want to put dogs in there too. What do you think?
Oh, dogs?
Yeah. Well, because obviously we try to minimize the amount of suffering. So we just think that why not extend it to all animals?
I mean, I don't know enough about the process to, like, I mean, after seeing, like,
This is the first time I think he kind of started disagreeing with you at this stage.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
what you're doing
Yeah.
here, like, to see, if it's, really. I mean, I don't.
Oh,
I
you
don't-
seem pretty confident in our practices about a moment ago, sir.
Yeah, I mean, but
Well,
like,
what's the difference? I mean, you seem pretty happy about seeing the pig in there, and even vegans. What's the difference between that and a dog? I don't get it.
I don't know. I wouldn't personally eat a dog.
Okay, but if other people wanted to, you'd be okay with them doing that and putting dogs in that position, wouldn't you, sir?
No, I
Oh.
guess not.
Can I ask why? Because that does really interest me, because you said that you were okay with everything that I just showed you, and you're not confident with putting dogs in there. I'm a little bit confused, to say the least.
Yeah, I guess you raise a good point, but I personally, like, for me, I don't know. Dogs are. Oh gosh, right? You really have me here now.
Yeah. So the vegans like to say that we're hypocrites.
Yeah,
What do you?
I say they're hypocrites.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
that
was
was
a funny
that's
bit.
one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I yeah,
I
so
want
you
to
go.
ask you this. Yeah, I want to ask you this. Just a moment. Oh yeah, this is the vegan FT account. So because I left a comment, I interacted on this from my personal account. So I just wanted to check this with you. That eventually, did you tell him that one, that you're a vegan, and how did he react to that? And secondly, like, did you confront him, like, dude, you were really okay, I mean, putting vegans, like humans, in there as well and not dogs? So did you ask him to, like, retrospect on that? Like, how was the end of this conversation?
Yeah, yes, I did exactly that. I explained it to him, and I pulled him up on it, and I had a positive conversation with him after, and I let him go on his way, obviously, and I can't remember the specifics. So I've got it on video. I might post the full length. What I'm going to probably do is post all of my videos in full on my Patreon at some point, because I have so many, and I'm mostly just posting clips because I'd be posting it on YouTube, and we'll see. But yeah, I want to put it all out there for people to see. But yeah, it was good. It was still good, and he understood it, and I explained it to him, so that was good. But yeah, I just love that one, because to see somebody, and obviously he wouldn't be okay with putting vegans in there. I really don't think so, but that just shows how persuasive and convincing somebody in that role as that type of farmer with a type of masculine energy or something, whatever it is, can have over people in those conversations, that they're not even willing to stand up for other humans. But then when it came to dogs, so it's got to do with something that he likes, he has a preference to protect. Well, then he stood up. Well, he barely stood up against it, but he was uncomfortable, definitely. And then he realized the hypocrisy there. So I just love that one. That was such a good one.
So on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most likely, 1 being least likely, how likely do you think this person will go vegan?
To be honest, looking back on even on all of these ones and every outreach I've ever had, I would love to know how many have actually gone vegan, but the thing is, it's often probably going to be a very small percentage. And that is the reality of what we do, is that we're really in the business of planting seeds
Hmm.
and getting people to think about something that they're probably never going to ever think about, really.
Hmm.
That's the goal. Some people will go vegan. Percentage is
Hmm.
obviously completely unknown, but I
Hmm.
feel that the more deeper you can go with that person, and the deeper you can get them thinking about the things that they are responsible for, that they naturally would be against.
Hmm.
I feel like that is a very, very positive outcome and a very good first step towards veganism. And then look, they might come across a few other things after that. It might be a year later, it could be 3 or 4
Hmm.
years later, and they will connect the dots, I hope. And I was one part of that. But really, it's not like I'm just churning out vegans after these types of things, but I'm definitely opening minds, I believe.
Yeah, of course. And this is something I do some activism workshops in India, and this is something I tell people that uh, don't put the burden onto yourself that your conversation will turn the other person vegan. You are just the trigger. There's what what you can do is get the person on a vegan ecosystem. That is, you uh, get them on challenge 22 or some of these programs, and
Mm,
get them added to transitioning vegan WhatsApp groups, get them to follow Instagram accounts of other activists and vegans, so that they are on the ecosystem, so that whatever seeds that you have planted, they are bombarded with similar messages on a daily
yes,
basis. Yeah. But yeah, our job at that moment, even though it may sound counterintuitive, but it's not really to make that person go vegan, because if we start seeing that as the matrix of success in that one conversation, then we are just setting ourselves up for a failure, right? And it
that's right.
can lead to a burnout. But yeah, like you rightly said, the important thing is to planting that seed. And that's why, for most people, except for a few, for most people, if you see, like, going vegan is not just one conversation or one video. It's one conversation, then they think more, then they'll again see someone else talking about it from a different perspective, so on and so forth. And that is like how that decision making process takes place, right? So we can always
That's right.
um, be the trigger. But so that's on a serious note, but just on a lighter note, because this was this was one of those conversations, like, which you keep thinking about even. And I'm sure that you have your own perspective as being the activist, but even someone like me who's just watching this and feel like, okay, what's this dude really thinking about when he's making such statements on camera, and knows that, okay, this will go out. And that sometimes you wonder, like, what's going, forget about if that person will go vegan or not. Sometimes I even think, looking at my conversations in general, I don't know if you do this or not, I feel that, okay, on what trajectory is this person on now? Like, I was just clearing my hard disk the other day, and I was looking at some of my conversations from 2 3 years back, and you see some really really dishonest remarks, right? Really dishonest remarks from people saying on camera. And it makes you wonder that what life trajectory are they on now?
Yeah, and it's not often going to. Yeah, it's unrealistic to go into a conversation and want it to end with them saying that they are going vegan. We can
Yeah.
get them very close to it. I've had that many times, but something that I have often neglected, which you've brought up, is actually providing the right resources for them, and actually allowing them to join that ecosystem if they're willing to, because yes, that is a very important next step. But yes, it is unrealistic to expect somebody to go vegan on the spot. I mean, most vegans didn't even do that. They come to it themselves. They'll go home, maybe they will then look into something else, and then they will make that decision for themselves. I would love to be able to turn somebody vegan and keep them vegan on the spot. That would be amazing. It's just not the case.
Yeah. But if it happens, and when it happens, that's a great feeling. Like sometimes you talk
Oh,
to people and
absolutely. We
they're
should
very,
still aim for it.
yeah, you get a message at night after the activism that, hey, what you said really got me thinking. Now I want to go vegan, help me with the next step. So a few days later you find a post, someone saying that, hey, I had this conversation and now I've gone vegan. So that's like an amazing feeling to have. But yeah, think of that as a bonus, not as the benchmark for every conversation. So yeah.
Absolutely. Good point.
And also during activism, sometimes we come across people who will make the wildest contradictions, uh, or to avoid the wildest contradictions they will resort to dishonest remarks, right? For example, even in this case, even though that was not a contradiction, but the other person said, yeah, I will be fine putting vegans in the gas chamber. Or sometimes people will say that, hey, yeah, if you get them to the name the trade position, and they will say, yeah, I'm fine with such type of humans being also subjected to similar levels of exploitation, right? Which you clearly know that they are just trying to be smart and trying to be consistent, but at the same time we know that it's absolutely uh, a dishonest remark.
Mm.
So wh- how, do you get such dishonest remarks? That's one. And if yes, then how do you deal with it? Like, do you say, okay, then this is where we end the conversation, or you still keep pushing for it?
Yeah, in fact, I only just posted a video yesterday of somebody saying that they would eat humans if they tasted good, because I asked them, you know, I think it went down the line of, why do you exploit and still continue to enslave animals? Well, because they taste good. And I said, okay, well, would you apply the same to humans? If they tasted good, would you eat humans? First response was, no, probably not. And then I just doubled down and I said, well, that's what your justification was. So would you? And then they said, well, if they tasted good, maybe I would. I would give it a go. And I don't believe them. But that's just the lengths people go to remain logically consistent, so that they can justify still consuming and exploiting animals. They lie to themselves often. They will lie just to be consistent. And yes, whether or not I continue, yes, I would. I would still continue after that, and just kind of call them out, like, I don't believe that. But regardless, depending on how hard somebody wants to hold their position, there are certain facts that are just true, and it's often about getting them to really think from the victim's perspective, and in fact put them in the victim's position. I find that is always very powerful, because once they are thinking from the animal's perspective, enslaved in a farm, confined, or about to be murdered in a slaughterhouse, well then yes, pretty much every person I ask that question would say, yes, I would prefer that my presser goes vegan. It's just common sense. So I think little thought experiments like this can get people to change their mindset, get out of the kind of debating mentality of like trying to defend their positions, because it is human psychology to want to remain logically consistent, even if that puts us in a deeper hole. That sounds stupid, like eating humans, when most people would be against that. So yeah, I just think it's important to try to get them to use their empathy and their imagination of what it would be like to be that victim.
Exactly. And despite our best efforts, sometimes still people are so hell bent on being consistent and being uh, sounding really evil on the spot. I mean, sometimes I think it's best to like disengage. Okay, fine. Now, what else do I do? Right? Do you feel that
Mm.
as well?
Yeah. There'll be times where I'll just say, look, I'm not. If I'm feeling a little bit, kind of confident or like willing to make the point clear, I'll say I don't really want to talk to psychopaths because
Hmm.
they're not clinically a psychopath, but they're acting no different to a psychopath. And
Hmm.
I think it's important to make it clear to them that your mentality right now, whether it is
Hmm.
true or you're just trying to hold this position to be consistent, you sound no
Hmm.
different to a psychopath. And sometimes I'll try to just say, look, I can't talk to that type of person. And then they might open up and say, well, actually, hold on. This is what I actually
Hmm.
think. Or maybe they won't. And then sometimes it's just not worth having those discussions with people because they are so closed off. Why waste my energy? Why waste my energy?
Hmm.
I do believe that most people are reachable. They are. But some
Hmm.
people aren't worth our time and our effort.
Hmm. Exactly. I mean, there's only so much we can do, and for the rest, we hope that someday we have a legal framework which takes care of such people, like how we have for humans as well, right? For human rights. Uh,
Absolutely.
like I believe this, that there would be a certain population of humans who, from ethical standpoint, they'll have no problem violating other humans, but it's just the legal framework that's stopping them, right? So I guess someday we'll need that legal framework to protect animals as well from human exploitation.
Absolutely. That is the end
Yeah.
goal. And it's a very, very important point. I think the legal system and people's daily decisions and just their ethics and values go hand in hand. The legal
Hmm.
system is the most powerful. Like if I could push a button and make it illegal tomorrow to stop
Hmm.
exploiting animals, I would press it
Yeah.
instantly. But the thing is, if people's minds aren't ready for that, and generally the society just isn't on board with it, whilst I would still press it 100 times, it might not lead to the outcome that we want within society because people will they would rebel against it. However, it would still be very, very good. But that just shows that we actually need to be disrupting society whilst also pushing for legal change, because the more
Hmm.
people we're able to get into the minds of regarding animal rights, they're more likely to vote in favor of certain animal rights issues,
Hmm.
whether they're vegan or not.
Hmm.
Just trying to push people in that direction might be enough for them to just vote for a pro
Hmm.
animal rights politician or political change. And that's probably the most likely way we're going to get to the future we want, is when they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because at this stage, unfortunately, the number of vegans and pro animal rights folks is very low. So we still have
Mm,
to probably do a lot of work with the bottom up approach, where we are getting individuals to become more and more vegans. But yeah, after a certain point in time, when we have like the enough numbers, that's when we have to like push really, really hard for policy level changes, and something which enforces people to be neutral to animals at the very least, like not being an exploiter.
absolutely. I think the number is 3.5%, based on some social studies of other movements, activist movements in the past. If 3.5% of a population becomes active, that's when we're going to see mass societal change. And yeah, that's the thing with the legal
Hmm.
system. You don't actually, with seeing this type of positive change we want, it's actually quite motivating to know that it's a relatively small percentage. Now we're very far away from that in terms of activists. Like that's actually activists, probably not just vegans, I imagine. Like
Hmm.
3.5% of a population speaking up against animal exploitation would
Hmm.
have such a big ripple effect in society that, like I was saying
Hmm.
before, it would be enough for people to actually vote a certain way,
Hmm.
whether they are vegan or not, and that would
Hmm.
you would start to see massive change in the way people
Hmm.
think about animals and the way the legal system actually protects them. So
Hmm.
it's a hard one because it seems like it's so far away, and how are we ever going to get 100% of people to go vegan? Chances
Hmm.
are it's zero that 100% of people will go vegan.
Hmm.
However, the legal system will get us pretty close to that, and actually convincing people of veganism and what it stands for, we're going to get there. But the thing is, even in the human world, racism still exists, sexism still
Hmm.
exists, homophobia still exists. All of these
Hmm.
discriminations still exist, even though we legally protect it. It's just we're in a much, much better place than what we
Hmm.
were, and that's what I hope for with animal rights.
Yeah. And also the 3.5% number, and which I have a slightly pessimistic view on that actually. So
Sure.
mm, that was done by someone named Erica Chenoweth, if I'm not wrong, at Harvard, I guess.
Mm,
So that 3.5% number in case of veganism uh, will be much higher. Has to be much higher than 3.5%, because in all the other social movements, they are also a huge chunk of the population that is neutral in nature. For example, if
true.
let's say we talk about racism, right? So there are countries who are, for example, the issue of racism that's there in the West, a country like India is kind of neutral to that. So people here, uh, it's easier for people here to stand against racism because people are neutral to that. But when it comes to the issue of animal rights, almost no one is in a neutral position, because the entire
Mm,
society rests on exploitation of animals, right? Because by default, almost everyone is
yeah.
a non-vegan. Probably the closest definition to someone who's neutral is, let's say, who's on a plant-based diet, not for ethical reasons, but even they are not neutral because they'll wear like leather and stuff.
I
Yeah.
that's a good criticism. Something that I might have thought about a little bit, and yeah, I do take that number with a grain of salt. And you're right;
Hmm.
it's probably going to be a lot higher, and there's going to be a lot more difficulty to create change than any other social movement, for sure, for sure.
Hmm.
Uh, but what I guess we can still take from that is it is not 100% of the population that we need,
Hmm.
or it's
Of
not even
course.
50%. Probably it's
Hmm.
much lower. It's much lower, still a long way away. But
Yeah.
it's I'm hopeful that it's achievable. I'm hopeful that it's achievable, and it starts with the
Yeah.
people. It starts with people.
Absolutely. Even I'm hopeful. I just feel that one, two things has to happen. One, we need more and more and more vegans, and secondly, we need more and more and more, even more vegan activists, like who are
Yeah,
out there speaking up. And activism doesn't mean that you have to become like a full time activist, but yeah, you are going out of your comfort zone, speaking up for the animals, and yeah, I mean, that will definitely help us, and I'm really hopeful that yes, it is achievable. I'm optimistic on that note. I was just pessimistic on that number, like how many vegans, or what population percentage do we need. Yeah. So
absolutely.
that so that being said, on one of your viral videos, I have like created a PDF of the comments that people have
Mm,
given. And would you like to go through them?
absolutely, that'll be great.
Yeah, of course, these are not very good comments, but should be fun. So all these comments are from your Labrador meat outreach, I guess, if not the
Yep.
Beagles one, but yeah, one of those. So I've collected some comments from there. So let's look at this one. Why people are so concerned about animals when they hate their neighbors? That's called brainwashed by industries who want to sell avocado them avocado them more expensive than meat. Okay, there's some typing error, but it's okay. We get the gist. Be first good to humans, then talk about animals otherwise. I called you celebrity, brainwashed, brain dead, zombie. So you have been called a celebrity, which is a good thing, which I'm taking away as positive from this. But at the same time, you have been called a brainwashed zombie, brain dead zombie. Yeah. So that's what about three there. But yeah, what do you have to say to that comment?
So they're just saying that we're not. Why bother speaking up and creating change for animals when we're still exploiting and not viewing other humans equally? And it's the same issue. It's the same issue. It's as simple as just not exploiting any sentient being. And that's the point of what a vegan is. It's we're just seeing sentient beings as equals in the eyes of rights and not being exploited. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I guess they'll never tell a child rights activist that, hey, why aren't you speaking up for racism, or an anti-racist activist to and telling an anti-racist activist that why aren't you speaking up for equal rights, and so on and so forth, right? So this whataboutery is so common when it comes to the animal
Yes.
rights, right? And uh, which comes from a place of privilege that such people put themselves at a pedestal where they feel that animals are not even worthy of being spoken for. They deserve
Mm.
what they are like how they are treated, and yeah, that is privilege 101.
Yeah, and this is just putting humans on a pedestal higher than animals. Like, we are more important. We deserve the attention first. We have to get it right for ourselves before we help somebody else. That's actually the issue. There is seeing them as lesser than us, when really that we're all on the same playing field here, and none of us want to be exploited. And it's going
Yeah,
vegan is a non-action. You don't have to go out and you don't have to become an activist. It's my preference that you become an activist for animals, but the reality is that you may or may not. What's most important is that you just no longer exploit anyone. As you
yeah,
know, yeah, it's that simple.
yeah, yeah. Increase your circle of compassion.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and I'm tired of the avocado statements. Probably Piers Morgan made that
Oh my goodness, yeah,
popular.
it's everywhere. Yeah.
Are you brainwashed by the people who are selling avocados?
Yes, I am. Whatever. No, it's I don't even get it. A lot of the time, it's just the irony of that most of the money is from the animal farmers here. They're the ones that are brainwashing their consumers to
Yeah.
think that something nice happens inside of a slaughterhouse in their farm, when it's the complete opposite. And that was the whole point of my farmer character, was to actually be the consistent and transparent farmer.
And the funniest part is that this avocado comment has become so popular that now people in India, when I do outreach, people tell me this, and I'm like, barely anyone eats avocados in India. Like, I had been vegan for 3 years before I actually tasted avocados, but I heard about this conversation. So what about your avocados? I mean, what do you mean by my avocados? Where is my avocado? I want to know, where is my avocado. So like,
Yeah.
this is something. I mean,
And look, what
social
I will
media.
say is this isn't a vegan related issue. Reducing harm of any type of product that we consume it's a good thing. It's a good thing to do, but
Yeah.
inevitably harm somebody can and will likely be harmed in any type of process, especially industrial processes, whether it's plant farming, animal farming, building roads, whatever it is. But the point of veganism, and this is why it's so important to be clear, it is the rejection of exploitation. Now, when growing avocados, people could be exploited, but it's not going to be the case, and that's the beauty of plant farming. But animals may be harmed in that process, but we're not actively going out to exploit somebody. And we also do
Hmm.
not live in a vegan world where farmers are vegan and are choosing veganic methods to protect their crops.
Hmm.
These
Hmm.
all these factors will come into it as well.
Hmm. And also, when people talk about this, it's like a strawman fallacy as well. So, all the non vegans and anti vegans watching this, please make a note that you are essentially confusing veganism with minimalism, where you're
Yeah.
talking about reduction harm, whereas when we talk about veganism, we are exclusively talking about rights violation. And that's what Jack was referring to, that we are talking about the direct exploitation that we are causing to these farmed animals because of our choices. And there's a difference between that versus every other type of harm that exists and which will happen just by our presence, and by presence of any sentient being. Like, that's how the nature is defined. And like Jack said, it's a great initiative that if you can think of ways on how to reduce the harm and suffering worldwide, But just because we are not able to do that 100% doesn't invalidate veganism.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's look at this one. Oh, yeah. So we don't eat dogs because we have determined they serve a greater purpose to us as companion than a food source. There are cultures around the world that don't share that perspective and eat dogs. It's moral relativism. This isn't the win you think it is. So the last line is because you were appreciated by a lot of vegans on that post, and this person definitely thinks that no, you are celebrating for no good reason, because
Yeah.
moral relativism. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, the issue lies in his first sentence. We don't eat dogs because we've determined they serve a greater purpose to us as a companion animal. So that is the fundamental issue here, that he still views dogs as a commodity and object to be
Hmm.
used for our benefit. Now, I like that he used the word companion because it's better than a pet, because that does kind of it's a term that can be used as a way to see them as lesser than us, but that he's saying the word purpose there, which is not the purpose of dogs. And
Hmm.
so his mindset is exactly what I am trying to expose. But really, the goal of the farmer character was to point at what most people are hypocrites in, which is that, they would want to protect dogs but exploit other animals. Some people don't care, and
Hmm.
they would exploit potentially both. But it was to get the message across there, expose a certain mindset, expose speciesism of people, and this person is a speciesist himself because he sees these animals as serving a purpose to him.
Exactly. And while I guess we all agree that of all these species, because of humans view world of the dogs are at a better position than the farmed animals. But sometimes what's often neglected, and that's something you very rightly underlined, the first sentence, they serve a greater purpose, that you're still seeing them as commodities. And I remember one activist, I can't recall who, someone mentioned that a lot of people who think that they love dog or they care for dogs, if they introspect a bit, they will come to the realization that at the end of the day they are just entertained by the cuteness of the dogs,
That's
right?
right.
And yeah, and in India, I don't know if how the situation is in Australia, but in India we have a huge issue with regard to community animals, also
Yeah, it's horrible.
stray animals. Yeah. So and we tell people that adopt, don't shop. Now what is this shopping? Shopping is essentially going to a breeder and then buying a fancy breed dog who may not be also native to the region, to the geography where you are getting the dog. And that is also exploitation, which is often neglected by people, and they are living in this illusion that they are nice people and care for and love dogs, right?
That's right. It's the ownership mentality that
Yeah.
we need to reject. Animals aren't commodities, objects for our own use and benefit. They are their own sentient individual they deserve their own rights just as we would, and it's as simple as that.
Yes, yes, and which brings me to the next comment, and this is a new one. I'm calling this loyalty, though. That now this has become the criteria. So I don't believe there's anything wrong with eating dogs. We just don't eat them because they loyal and know how to obey. Now this is
Yeah,
again like written in a very passive manner, but if you really deconstruct this is also an example of sheer dominance, right?
absolutely. It's the same issue again. Um, yeah, this person just views dogs as objects to be used, and he just prefers not to eat them because he would prefer them be loyal and obey him and serve him in other ways. That
Hmm.
is precisely the issue. And I do outline this in pretty much all of my farmer videos, or most of them, when I do give a message at the end that, um, just as that person that I was speaking to wouldn't want to exploit dogs, we shouldn't exploit any animals. And so, yeah, I
Hmm.
don't really care if this person doesn't think there's anything eating wrong with dogs. That's not the point. The point is that we shouldn't exploit anyone.
Yeah, and this, the way it's written, like they obey, and that's why we don't
Yeah,
exploit them. Also, like a very similar to a sexist remark as well, right? Like how this,
Absolutely, it is. It's
yeah,
yeah,
alpha male thing,
these
like, yeah,
yeah, yeah. I was just going to say that they all share these common characteristics of seeing somebody else to be used because you see yourself as above them, and
mm,
we're going to see the same symptoms of this discrimination across all these different movements.
yep, yep. uh, Again, pure display of speciesism. Dogs are pets, and cows, chickens, sheep are cattle in farms and poultry.
Yeah, and this person's just sh- presenting a reality that I'm trying to expose and end. It's the same as the other ones, but this person's just
Yeah,
putting it clearly that dogs are pets and cows are chickens, are sheep, cattle, and farms and poultry. And yeah, that is the unfortunate reality that I'm trying to end
yeah.
and bring light to.
And also, if you think about it, this classification is so native to one's geography and culture. Now, let's say if someone is in a different country, then they might probably put dogs in the category of consumption,
Yeah,
and someone might put cows in the category of reverence, and so on and so forth, right? And that is where people need to also think that, is there like, are their thoughts original, like, or is it just an outcome of conditioning by the society where they live in? They just happen to live in a certain society where X animals are supposed to be exploited and Y animals are supposed to be kept as pet, and Z animals are supposed to be seen as gods and goddesses, right? So that, in addition to speciesism, this also underlines the utter lack of critical thinking that is there in today's society.
no, that's exactly what it is. It's the outcome of conditioning. This is just what this person has been taught and
Hmm.
conditioned to think, and that's exactly what they're spilling out in this comment. Um, yeah, no, it's a good way. That is what it is, and I like the way you put it.
All right, and this is the last one. So, how do you react to that?
Yeah, I actually had people come up to me and say that they had had dog before, or they would have another type of animal, and they didn't really take any issue on it. And um, in fact, this is where I actually had to be ready to improvise because obviously the goal was to speak to the majority of people that are against eating dogs,
Mm,
but some people do exploit and consume dogs, and then I would just go into humans because they might be against humans. They would be
mm,
against exploiting other humans unless they are
mm,
okay with that too. And then you're just dealing with a person where, as I was explaining earlier to you, that we need to then put them in the victim's position. And if even then they do not have empathy because they're choosing to be ignorant or remain logically consistent, uh, they are starting to sound like a psychopath. And we need to call them out for that. And it's important to be able to capture these people and expose these people. So I actually will screenshot these comments and make a response and put it on my story. There are many, many ways that we can expose this mentality because most people have values against exploitation and abuse, and I think you can get people on your side. And when you get people like that, it's just important to expose it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, essentially, your idea is that make people relate to a certain being and how you evoke empathy in them. You tried that with dogs, but then you also come across people like these, and then you feel like, okay, now should I take it to humans and let's see if
Mm.
the empathy can be evoked from there? But it's not working out. It's not working out. Just call out on their psychopathic tendencies, and yeah, the, and maybe I think in that case probably that person is no more our audience for going vegan, or to think in that direction. But the conversation, and like you rightly said, screenshotting, like having a screenshot of these comments and then showing it to the rest of the world, like how absurd this thought process is, and
Yes.
exposing that helps others see the reality as well.
Yeah, so there were a few videos that I had as the farmer where I didn't actually reveal myself as a vegan, and there were some of the earlier ones that I did that I
Hmm.
shared. Um, And there were a few people where I was taking a different type of approach, and not the approach of actually converting this person. In fact, it seems strange to say, but sometimes cementing what they might already believe, for the sake of the audience to see how absurd this mentality is. Now, people might know the actor comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, who did like Borat and stuff like that, and whilst he was pretty much just doing it for comedy, there he did do some political commentary of exposing some absurd beliefs and behaviors of people. So I was taking that into my mind, and I was talking to a few of these men that came up to me, and I was really testing them, and I was kind of I was alluding to like Nazis and stuff like that, and just seeing how willing they would be to be on board with the absurd stuff that I was saying, just to, again, be consistent in their beliefs. And what you get as a result is the exposing of that mentality, that dark mentality, and people can make up their own minds of which side that they want to be on. So again, it was a different form of activism that most people probably wouldn't do, because we are trying to convince people to go vegan, but this was more for the audience and actually showcasing that mentality.
I think that's a very smart way of activism as well. And sometimes people miss the point in such activisms. Because if you really think about it, to simplify and give people perspective, let's say one of the viewers who's a vegan activist is invited to a Piers Morgan show, right? I'm just giving one example. Now, we have seen the opinion of that person over time, and we know that that person, in most likelihood, will not go vegan, right? But then the objective is what going into that show, not to really convince the host, that is Piers Morgan, but rather expose his inconsistencies and let the viewers see that, okay, this person makes sense, the activist makes sense, and he or she is exposing the hypocrisy of the other person. And that then becomes a piece of activism for the viewers, right? And this can be for anyone with a huge platform, where we go and we know that, okay, maybe we'll not get anything as an outcome with regard to the guest on the show or with regard to the host on the show, but there are still hundreds and thousands of people who are watching this, and they may get impacted by that. So that's a wise strategy, actually.
Yeah, I agree. So it's like I said, it's not for every activist to do that thing, but I just knew that this type of video could get a lot of attention, and for every non-vegan that sees this, the things that this other person is saying is so absurd and wrong, morally wrong, that hopefully that they would get a seed planted and choose the side of non-exploitation, as compared to the person that is so is literally promoting it and making a joke of animal exploitation and abuse.
Yeah, but you also rightly said that not this is not everyone's cup of tea when it comes to this form of activism, which also means that there will be some activists or vegans who will not resonate with this type of activism and may criticize you. So I have a question for you, but before that I want to show a video, because uh, that is probably one of those pieces of activism that you have done which some vegans do not agree with. So first we'll look at that, and then I'll ask your question. Then I'll ask you a question, that how do you take criticism from vegans with the type of activism that you do? So you probably know where I'm going, but let's have a look at this one first.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you are comfortable being animal abusers?
I'm just want to have a fish. Can you just leave me alone,
These
please?
fish want to live. They
Mate,
feel pain. They suffer just like you.
What's
mate,
the
I don't
problem,
want
mate?
to talk
Would you do this to a dog? Would you hook a dog in the mouth?
Just fucking leave us alone. We're just
I'm not
having
going
a
to leave you alone
fish.
because you're not leaving the fish alone. You're actually an animal abuser.
What'd you fucking call me,
I
mate?
called you an wait.
What'd
I called you an
fucking
animal
call me, mate?
abuser.
Oh my god! What the fuck?
Just fuck
No,
off,
no.
mate. Fucking vegan.
So
Fuck you, vegan.
so before you actually talk about criticism that you get from vegan, I want to ask you, was this a real footage or was this staged for social media?
Yeah, and this is the first time I've probably even said it public, because I didn't see the point and it wasn't the point of it. But yes, it was staged. The backstory is that I actually did have a full outreach conversation with these people, but the microphone glitched and we didn't capture the audio. very unfortunate. So we told them that as I was leaving, and he said that he did know who I was and he really wants to be in a video. So Tash and I had this idea a while ago of just kind of like staging one of these videos just to be funny, but also get a message in there. And so this person was open to it. We staged it, and it was the point is, it really surprised me that this wasn't clear to people. And I have a few ideas to why, but just the point is I want to get a message out there that's against fishing and is calling it out as animal abuse and shows that I'm against it. We acted it, we did it, we showed that their response. If anything, it only just shows that these people are naturally abusive and are wanting to defend their position. And that was it. That was really it. It was, but people were really annoyed that they thought it was staged. But this is what I think the issue was. The issue is that it was so people were so on the fence of whether this actually is staged or not. And I think that frustrates people. It's like, yeah, is this real or is this not? But it's like, that's besides the point. I think if I lean towards it being more of a skit and obviously not true, well, then people would see the point. But then but because it was right on the edge, people were frustrated. But it's like, look, at the end of the day, the message is clear in it. That's all I cared about. And the rest of it was just for fun, and it got attention, and it was a fun video to watch. And I'm still glad I made it because I love watching it. It's just funny. It's funny, like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny, and I could not understand why people didn't get it, because your jump into the water was pretty clear that okay, you had in your mind that you have to jump. So it was like you did not fall, you did not fall off, right? It was like a very smart jump. So yeah, but yeah.
And the hat stayed on.
Yeah, the hat stayed on. So of course there were a lot of people who were mocking you and saying that okay, this is stage, which I mean it was pretty much clear, but that's okay. I mean, like someone wrote there as well that people who are annoyed in the comment section are just helping amplify the message with the engagement, right? But then I also saw that there were some vegans who were not comfortable, and this is not to do with the fact that whether the scene was staged or not, but with the fact that even if it were not staged, but talking to someone like this and confronting them in such an aggressive manner, and some people who thought that this is not staged actually wrote that now what you have done is that this person will always have a negative outlook towards veganism, so you have done more harm than you actually realize. Now of course, had this not been staged, then that statement would have been true, but you
Mhm.
get the drift, right? This kind of criticism that people throw.
What I will
So,
say, what I can say to that is, again, it's the same as before. It's knowing that I have an audience watching. Would I go up to somebody, and even in reality, which I have actually, I've done it in with not staged, in a protest, kind of just going up and questioning people and saying what I think is wrong about it. I wouldn't do it without a camera, because it's because then without a camera, I know I'm only talking to that person, and maybe at that point it kind of wouldn't really be worth my time, and I would probably try to take a different approach. But even if you come in there as the really nice person and you're trying to be friendly and say, hey, this is what I think, people just don't want to hear it regardless. So there is a balance to strike there, and it's got to do with personal choice. But the reason that I would take that approach is because, first of all, it's a very powerful and true approach, in the sense that you are representing victims here who are having their throats slit and their heads chopped off. Now, put a human in that position. How would you want someone to speak up for you that are ignorant to it and are choosing to ignore it, or even belittle it and make a joke out of you? How would you want someone to speak up for you? You want them to come in with force. But yeah, that was staged, so obviously it was even more like that. I wouldn't actually do that if it weren't staged. But regardless, that's not really the issue here. And it was powerful, and it creates attention, and it gets people thinking, it gets people discussing it, and it gets people actually thinking like, wow, he actually is coming in there with a lot of and force and emotion and truth in what he's saying. but people again would rather attack the message than focus on the message. So
Hmm.
that's my thoughts on it.
Hmm. Exactly. And like you rightly said, that the type of activism, that's a personal choice. That's a good example of personal choice, even though in the animal rights circle we hear personal choice often in a wrong light. But yeah, that's something which makes sense. And I always tell people that, hey, if let's say Jack is doing this type of activism and you feel that it's not working, then why don't you go ahead and do the right type of activism and let that work? And I'm sure that others who are watching, someone like a Jack or me, if we feel that okay, your type is working, and we are humble enough to adapt, right? Because at the end of the day we want the same thing. As of now we don't have any solid data point that X will work
Mm, that's
100%.
the issue.
if
Yeah,
if if that happens, of course we'll do that, right now we are all in a way trying to figure out. And the one ray of hope in all of this is, and which is really sad but still that is how it is, that because almost everyone around us is non-vegan, it doesn't matter the type of activism we choose, we will always find the right audience who will relate with that message and change. Like,
that is right.
doesn't matter, it could look crazy to me, but I'm sure that even that kind of activism will have some audience that will relate to it and change at this stage, given how less of a proportion we are as compared
Yeah,
to
and,
the
and
total.
and some people will make the argument that yes, you might get a small percentage of people that actually are open to that style. They might
Mm,
consider veganism or see it in a more positive light and see the message differently. But then they might make the argument that for the rest of the people, they're actually going to be more put off veganism, if otherwise. So to that, well, first of all, there's no data to
yeah,
suggest that we
exactly.
don't actually we know for that for
How?
sure. But at the end of the day, it's there are different styles of activism, and there are I would say that there's no bad activism only when it's kind of very obvious that they aren't
Mm,
really conveying the message well. It's not clear, and they're kind of diverting away from what the vegan message actually is. So I think if we're very
mm,
clear, we're very truthful, we're not just personally attacking somebody. We're not
mm,
just we're just. I think if we're on point with what we're trying to convey here, whether our emotion goes towards frustration, anger, sadness, or whether it goes to positive, calm, patient, that that will depend on the scenario, and it will depend on the
mm,
type of outcome you're trying to get with whatever you're doing. But what
mm,
matters most is that we are very clear with our messaging. That is the rejection
mm,
of animal exploitation, and
mm,
that point is got across. And then if you can
mm,
reach that many people, if you can reach a lot of people with that message, well, then I believe that
mm.
that is a good outcome regardless. I don't think, yes, some people will be like, oh, I don't like vegans now because of this one person. Well, the chances are they already didn't like vegans.
Yeah,
So,
it's just a confirmation bias. It's a confirmation bias which, uh, even if that person had not seen a content like that, their feeling towards veganism and animals was pretty much negative only. But now they have
mm,
this convenient, flawed argument, guilt by association, ad hominem, whatever you may call it. So they have this convenient argument, which is a flawed argument, but yeah, it's a confirmation bias for them that okay,
mm,
now I have one more reason not to become a vegan.
yes. Now, yeah, we don't look. We fundamentally we do not have the strong evidence to point us in any direction. But I do believe in activism diversity, so long as the message is clear. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, that that's really where I'm at this point in time.
Hmm.
So, like my current activism, which has actually been getting a lot of positivity with the characters and the reverse psychology, lots and lots of positivity, even from non-vegans.
Hmm.
Um, no one is to say that all that positivity actually isn't converting as many people to go or consider going vegan as a disruptive protest would. I have
Hmm.
seen countless examples of people saying that they've went vegan because of Tash Peterson and
Hmm.
the activism she does. Very, very like extreme in the sense that she is very, very clear, loud, and disruptive. So how could that turn somebody vegan? Well, it's converted so many people, and whether or not that puts somebody else off veganism, they were already off veganism. But they might come around to somebody else. In fact, if someone really doesn't like Tash and then they see the other person doing the activism that they like, apparently, well, then they might actually be more persuaded by that other person. Well, I didn't like Tash Peterson, but I really like your style. So now I'm more open. So people like Tash, this is where I'd say that she's shifting the Overton window. She's kind of pushing things ahead, or maybe it's too far ahead for some people. But what that does is it opens up this other space that people are more comfortable with, which they probably wouldn't have thought about otherwise. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
not black and white.
Yeah, at this stage, of course, it's not black and white. We with as we grow, we may have
Yes, we
data
might
to
get more
suggest
answers.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we exactly. So on activism, and you talked about your style of activism. There's something interesting I noted in on your Instagram page, and you can choose not to answer that, up to you. But on your Instagram page, which is also your activism page, you have linked your OnlyFan page as well. So is that also some sort of activism, or it's
No,
not?
no, no, no. It's just a financial thing. I'm not really using it that much. We've been more successful with Tash, and that's what's actually allowed us to do activism. So
Hmm.
it's separate. It's separate to activism. It's just another way of getting financial support, and it's been our primary way of doing activism and actually supporting ourselves. So because unfortunately we're not going to get the money anywhere else, and but yeah, for myself, I don't really use it that much at all, really. But that's just another avenue for people to support us. In fact, I actually do get activists on there wanting to support me in that way, so it's actually quite convenient and it's beneficial.
Yeah. Okay, so you've converted OnlyFan into a Patreon page.
Essentially that. I want to start using my Patreon page, as I mentioned earlier. I'm going to be putting all my unposted, unedited conversations on there. So I think that people will get a lot of use out of that. But it's just another form of income. So if people want to if activists want to do OnlyFans, I do not object to that at all. I think it's can be a very useful source of income for some people. And why not? If it's going to fuel their activism, it's so powerful and so beneficial.
Yeah. Uh, Just the other day, so I was reading up something with regard to feminism and different schools of feminism. There's radical feminism and liberal feminism, and how they differ in their thought with regard to a woman willingly uh, trying to objectify her body to gain power in the society. So there were different activists, feminist activists, who were kind of debating that issue, and it was interesting perspective. But yeah, of course, a much deeper discussion for some other day. But at this stage, the kind of work that you are doing, I am sure that there would be a lot of people who would want to support you. And on during we'll what we'll do is we'll put on your Patreon page link on this podcast, and I'm sure that the kind of virality that you are getting on social media, on Instagram, and I'm sure on TikTok. I haven't seen TikTok because it's banned in India, but I'm sure with these kinds of videos, you are reaching to a lot of people, and at the very least, you are making them think from the victim's perspective, and that is
Mm.
damn powerful. And I genuinely hope that more and more people support you, and you get to do this focusing completely on activism. That would be a great outcome for the movement. And talking about movement, what's your thought on the current animal rights movement as a whole? Now, you have been an activist. You are very active on social media. You see activists from different parts of the world. What do you think about the movement in general?
Yeah, I've seen ups and downs within our community here in Perth. I can't really say what I think of it overall, worldwide. But I've actually gone to travel and spend time with different activist groups in Europe and the UK and in the eastern states of Australia. And every time
Mm,
I love being able to spend time around these other communities because they're all doing their
mm,
thing, they're all doing it well. And one thing that I specifically see on social media is I'm seeing activists get more and more creative and finding their niche as activists and finding as many different ways to get the message across. And that's what I
mm,
think is most powerful right now, um,
mm,
is getting our message to the widest possible audience and a diverse range of audience through our unique creativity. And that's something that I've leaned into more and more recently, that my partner Tash just found that she had her own skill that got mass attention, mass media, like mainstream media attention, just from leaning into what comes to her naturally and her own creativity. And I'm seeing
mm,
that amongst other activists online, and I think that is extremely powerful.
hmm. Yeah. Especially like to your point, especially the new age activists, like the second wave of activists, I would say, or the third wave of activists, if we consider like
Sure.
um, even though
Like
Earthling Ed and Joey
decades ago,
Armstrong,
yeah.
they are, yeah, they're decades ago, and plus like probably 6 7 years back, there
Yes,
were
yes.
not many, right? Earthling Ed, Joey Armstrong, Arvind, so there were like few people who were talking about it, but now we see so many people coming up, and like you rightly said, people are being creative and talking about animal rights in different
Mm,
ways and reaching to new audience, and that is very hopeful to see
yes.
at the least, right? All right. Would like to ask you about your thoughts on activism in the long term, and is there something else that you have thought of that you will do in future?
Yeah, so for me, it's something that I believe I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I just can't imagine doing anything else. But for me, I'm finding more and more that it's an art form, really. And that's why I
Mm,
was saying the word creativity before, because I'm naturally a
mm,
creative person. So I'm just getting a lot out of just constantly having different ideas come to me and working on those ideas. And I think that that's the future for me. I'm just going to continue to lean into what feels right for me, what kind of excites me the most, what makes me most happy, which has been the more recent style of activism. And I
mm,
feel like the possibilities are endless there, and I can only grow them to be bigger and bigger. So
mm,
yeah, I'm just going to lean into what feels right, what feels intuitively right to me, and
mm.
work on those ideas and just grow what I have now into more and more as the future goes on. Because I just find that so enjoyable, and it's a form of
Mm.
work that I don't really consider work anymore. It's a lot of
Uh,
time behind the computer, editing the videos and stuff like that, but it's all worth it. So that's how I know I'm on the right track.
exactly, it's very satisfying, and I can say this because I have also recently shifted from corporate work to full-time activism,
Yep.
and completely relate with that. Now, for the first time in my life, I feel that work is not work. This is
Yeah.
purpose of life, and yes, we get stressed. I'm sure you get stressed out certain
Very.
times, like, yeah, with multiple things because of so many tasks. Videos have to be uploaded, and algorithm things working, not working, plus sometimes looking at those footages while editing, like animal exploitation footages and all of that. So yes, it gets taxing at time, but that being said, um, it is also satisfying, like you rightly said, because it's we can't imagine doing something else as long as animal liberation is not achieved.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've gone through so much crap and stress and burnout from doing all the things that I have done,
Hmm,
but over the years, but I wouldn't change it. I mean, obviously, if I didn't have to go
hmm,
through all that crap, I wouldn't. But in a way, it's just part of it. And yeah,
hmm.
I wouldn't do something else just to avoid it. I want to lean into it more and more. I find it so satisfying, as you said.
Yeah. All right. So we are at the end of this discussion, and there's one question which I always ask my guests, it's not a question, rather a message that you have for two groups of people, one who are vegans and one who are not vegans yet.
Mm. Okay, so something that I would tell vegans is if you're not active, become active, because for the same reason that you went vegan, I hope, was thinking from the victim's position and that you wouldn't want somebody to be oppressing you anymore. And also thinking from the victim's position, you would want someone to be out there advocating for your rights. So that's what I would say. If you're not active, become more active. If you're already an activist, lean into it more and more. Get creative. Find what resonates with you, what excites you, what you enjoy. Don't just do what other people do, you know. And that's a great way to start, is to look at the activists you admire and kind of try to replicate their work, and then you will find the avenues that you can go further down. So that's for vegans and activists. For non-vegans, well, it's just a step before that. It's to put yourself in the perspective of those animals that you pay to be exploited daily, and to ask yourself, what would you want your oppressor to do? And common sense would suggest that as a sentient being, you would not want to be exploited, and those animals equally do not want to be exploited just as you do. So grant them the right to life, and take the non-action of just not exploiting them anymore. It's a very, very simple thing to do, and the change is really not that difficult at all. And once you know why you're doing it, once you know the why, and you understand that that is the bare minimum that these animals deserve, it will not be difficult whatsoever. In fact, it will be liberating, and it will be satisfying knowing that you are no longer responsible for such atrocities. So that's what I would say to non-vegans.
Yes. The how to go vegan becomes really easy if you understand why to go vegan. And that is the crux of it. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And also choose to be on the right side of the history, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, that someday we will look back in time and will not be in a position to even believe that this is how we treated other sentient beings. So
That's
choose
right.
to be on the right side of the history. Yeah. So thank you so much, Jack, for this conversation. It was a pleasure for me to host you, and we had a really insightful discussion. And thanks to all the viewers for tuning in. And until we meet again, this is Shivam and Jack signing out. Thank you.
Thank you.